so we can actually, we do have a quorum. We can call it to order. So we will at, what, 7:04, somewhere in there. Do we have any revisions to the agenda, folks?
Nothing but typos. Proofreading.
Okay,
I don't know if we're
Is
planning
that the
another
minutes
meeting,
or the
but I have some
agenda?
feedback if we are.
Oh, the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm jumping
Okay.
the gun.
no, I was just looking for,
Fine.
I was looking for revisions to the agenda. We'll get to revisions to other things in a minute here.
Let's expedite tonight, shall we?
Yeah. I was gonna skip introductions, because everybody knows everybody, and they put the names under them on TV. Yes, we do. So,
Yeah, that's great, actually.
that is awesome. No revisions to the agenda. Members of the public, do you have anything you'd like to bring to our attention at this point?
Not
All
yet.
right. Not yet?
And if you want to, you're gonna have to speak up, because his back's to you.
Yeah, just throw something at me, guys, it's okay. So, we would need a motion to approve the minutes from November 16th. We can correct them after we make
Yeah,
a motion,
I was
right?
gonna say, I'll make the motion.
Yeah,
I second it.
okay. So it's been moved and seconded, now we can discuss and make the changes we need to make.
Aaron
Oh,
Zargo
where's
from
that
Brookline was not at the last meeting.
Peter did send a revised,
I was only going on the one that John sent, and I saw,
Peter sent a revised edition, which I actually have, where Aaron is out. I don't have the wrong,
okay,
the previous edition.
They both were together, I think, when he sent the second one, but there is one that has Aaron's name
Oh,
taken
okay.
out of it.
Okay, so we know Aaron wasn't here.
so what
Um,
There were some others.
the one I looked at had somebody here, I think it had Bucky here
That's
when he
the old
wasn't,
one, so I'm gonna put.
the one I looked at, but yours doesn't seem to have.
Okay, mine doesn't have
I
Bucky
think
here.
this is the corrected version then, and I didn't.
Does it work?
Okay, yeah, mine is the corrected version. We don't have Bucky, we don't have Aaron.
Okay.
We have it. But if people don't have the corrected version, do we just table that till the next meeting?
Your
or-
corrections and I'll collate it, I'll make it all good.
Okay, so what do we got for corrections, folks?
Just needs general proofreading.
On this one?
I don't see sense in going all through it, because it's,
Okay, so just typos, right?
yeah.
If you have concerns, email them to me and I'll let you know.
So if I could just say, the one that John sent is not the correct one, the one that went with the agenda.
Looks
Just
like
so
I got
everybody-
another one after that.
Right, so as long as everybody saw the second corrected version, thank you, Peter, then as long as we're going on that, I think we'll.
Okay.
That is the second version, so you should bring it up. I don't know if that was.
Keewaydin is spelled incorrectly,
Okay.
I guess, on the second version as well as the first.
Yep.
Yes.
Page 3.
And I think there was another one too. No.
Okay, so can we approve the minutes for content and then just clean up the spelling? Does that work?
Yes.
Yep.
You got another one? Okay, all right. So that works? All in favor of approving the minutes for content and correcting the spelling afterwards, say aye.
Right.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right. Next up is the outreach efforts, the connection with the citizens. Patty, do you want to talk about that, or do we want Anita to talk about that?
I'm over here.
She's over here.
Where'd she go?
Both of you want
Well, the blog is constantly updated, so as new stuff comes in, it's totally together. We have not, with this group, released a draft of any of your work so far. We can do that if you reach to the point of approval on item whatever it is tonight, item 7. Then I'd like permission to release the document. The other committee has made arrangements to leave one printed copy at each of their schools, and then if somebody wants a copy, it can be emailed to them. They can go to their school and read it. So you may want to handle that differently. You may want to make more copies available in different places, but they decided that that was enough. The critical thing is, once that report goes out, I'd like to issue a press release and include a couple of quotes. It can be from any of the committee members. Patty, who's been my main contact. Joe, I'd love to have something from you, and I certainly would love to have something for the members of the audience, and maybe the principals would like to comment. So a press release with quotes in it always stands a better chance of getting printed than one without. And then the other thing that I'm still asking for is some kind of a timeline to know when you plan to arrange your public meeting sessions and what format you'll use for those, so we can begin publicizing those. Obviously, that's, if you have 2 meetings per town times 5, that's 10 different meetings that have to be scheduled in some kind of a format figured out, or if you lump them and have little group meetings here and there, so it's a lot to figure out. So I want to urge you to jump on that. People's minds will be distracted over the holidays, but once January rolls around, that town meeting day deadline is right around the corner.
Right.
More stuff?
That sounds like, I mean, that sounds like it makes sense. Hopefully we'll have something that we can release, both press release and draft
Right, there
report.
hasn't been a demand. I haven't been getting emails or anything. I turned on the inbox on the WCSU media inbox, and it's on my desktop, on my laptop all day long, so there haven't been demands of people demanding to read it or see it, so,
Are we getting a lot of questions?
no,
No?
No, very little.
Not a lot of feedback?
no.
Can you tell how many views we get?
Yeah, you're up to about 600 and almost 700 views,
Oh, so-
but there's no way for me to determine on a blog site whether they're bots and spiders or actual people. I will say that the other committee is up to nearly 3,000 views, which I can only suspect is other computers looking at it. That seems like a crazy high number. So,
So
I
if
wonder
I,
if we need to do something.
excuse me?
every time I go in it, it's a view?
Yes.
I mean, I just went into it just now.
Yep, so
just
that'll
to
check
check.
up as a view.
Okay.
Right, and a lot of those views are mine, making sure all the links work and stuff too,
Okay.
so.
So it's
But
not
still,
heavily
700 or 800 is pretty good for the populations of these towns. I think it's reasonable. I think it
Oh.
shows that that's more likely to be actual people
Okay.
looking at it than the 3,000
Oh,
something.
I was
of-
very impressed with 3,000. I
Yeah.
said, what are they doing that we're not?
Yeah, well, that particular one shows a spike over a particular 24-hour period, which is what makes me think it was a bunch of computers looking at it, not people. All I can see are the spikes, and yours is a relatively even, which makes me think it's people.
Okay.
So there were no spikes after the election
No.
because we had the brochures at
No.
town hall.
No.
Didn't generate a bunch of traffic. Okay,
All right, thanks.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Continuing to review the draft report and articles. I guess we're down to three points that we have to work on here. Opportunities for students, and we need to work on the conclusion. Opportunities for students is on page, shoot. Seven? Yeah. Yep, 7, and then it's also Exhibit A, right? Attachment A talks about some of the things with increased student opportunities. That's a lot of what came from the principals, right? Joe?
Yes.
And then
Yeah,
what's been
and
generated
that
from
was
our-
reviewed at the last meeting, Joe.
Right.
And people extracted things from that. And I tried to capture what the conversation was, and
So this is a summary of the conversation at
Yes.
the last meeting?
Yeah.
Great, that's what I assumed it was, and it felt like it.
Okay. So, I have read the minutes of the last meeting, but I did not get a chance to watch the whole thing. So, go ahead, Patty.
I just have one thing, I read the whole thing, on the first bullet, elementary school choice. I'm wondering if we should insert in there within the district, or something that specifies that it's not just blanket elementary school choice.
So on page 7 of the
Page
first,
7 of 34.
First bullet.
first bullet, within the unified union or something.
Something like that, just so it doesn't look like it's blanket school choice.
Didn't we talk about naming ourselves like the West River?
West River.
You know, so elementary school choice within the West River.
I don't think that name comes up until Article 1. So, so we'll have to figure out what to put there. Unless you want to just put that name early at the beginning. You can do that.
We can't just say within the district.
Well, we could say within the district.
I think it should say the unified union.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, if we're gonna just do it that way.
Unified Union District.
I don't
I'll-
really care which way you
Yeah,
do it.
I'll
John.
make sure
Yeah, okay.
it aligns with everything else.
As long as it flows.
I think the
yeah.
point is
Newly
is a
formed
good one.
district, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever
I
it
think
takes.
it's-
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think it's a good.
John will figure that out, let's move on.
Okay. What else we got? Yes, Drew.
Up here in this section, or are we moving on from this section?
Wherever you'd like.
A comment was brought up about town meeting day and not being able to have a discussion while balloting was going on. Is there any way that we could not have that conflict?
So while there's an Australian ballot going on, also have a meeting?
Well, the issue's come up before because you can't have this discussion on the floor if there's balloting going on.
Right, right.
And that would be an opportunity where people actually do show up and want to
Yeah.
ask questions, and we're gonna have to say we can't discuss those questions because there's active balloting going on.
What does Leland Gray do, a meeting before the
We,
vote?
I mean, and I can't imagine doing it anything differently, and Drew knows this, we hold information meetings prior.
Yeah.
And that's the only, because Australian balloting doesn't happen at our building, it happens in each individual town. So we hold the meetings, you know, however many information meetings we choose, there's one required by law.
I was wondering whether it makes sense to have the Australian ballot at town meeting, because that eliminates the ability for us to discuss it at town meeting.
We have our town meeting at Sunny Lane Daycare, but the Australian ballot for Act 46 is gonna be at Town Hall.
Don't we do ours at the town office? And then we have the meeting at the town hall?
Not typically, because the town clerk is generally at the town meeting, so.
Right, which is true of most towns,
Yeah.
and ours balloting
Yeah.
goes on where the town meeting
Right.
takes place, it doesn't matter where it is, we alternate where it is, so the
It was a
conversation
concern that was
couldn't
brought
happen.
up, right?
Yeah, I
It was
think
a real
that's,
concern.
I don't know a way around that, because I think that's state law.
It is.
And so I don't know how you would,
I guess my question is, does it make sense to have the Australian ballot that day versus,
It's the only day you're gonna get turnout is mine.
Yeah, that's
People are
voting
going
law.
for other things like,
You can't discuss what's being voted on while the vote's going on the
Right.
premises. Of
So
course, you
we
wanna take somebody
hesitate to move up for
100
that
feet
reason.
outside of town meeting and have talking.
We run the risk of very low voter turnout if we move it later, right?
yeah.
I'll also, can I just?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I'll speak about town meetings briefly, and I can only speak about Newfane's. Well, I go to 3 town meetings, but, and Townsend's pretty well attended, I know. But, I wouldn't consider our town meeting representative of the whole community anymore, as it used to be. There's less and less people, Bucky, you can correct me or Ken if you think I'm wrong, but I see less people at town meeting than there ever have been. But I do know in Newfane, we do all of our voting by Australian ballot for candidates up for election and everything else. So people are used to coming in and voting Australian ballot in Newfane for town meeting. And if we moved it from that date, I think it would really hurt the turnout. I really do. And so I think the responsibility would be very heavily upon this committee to make sure that information is out there ahead of time, and we hold enough meetings that maybe in each community, as well as one maybe at Leland Gray or something just prior to town meeting, to make sure that there is plenty of time for people to ask questions and get out. This is a challenge no matter what. People don't want to go out more than once. I mean, most of them. I understand that, but I would really worry about Newfane having to have it on a different day, since they're used to voting that day anyway, Australian ballot. But you guys can have a different day.
Go ahead.
No.
Oh, sorry, Patty.
Well, I was thinking about this, and not this specifically, because I didn't know about this law, but, you know, I think to get people at these informational meetings is gonna be really key. And direct contact with them is more of a driving force than necessarily websites and that kind of stuff. And if do any of the representatives from our area have email addresses for all of or a good portion of the constituents, so they might be willing to send out an email to their
Like a
constituents.
listserv for each,
Yep,
I know
letting,
Townsend does that.
alerting them to this
Yeah.
and to the meetings and what the meeting is about. And because I know when Jamaica was going through that school choice thing, anytime Oliver sent an email out, we got a actually quite good, varied, we got a good turnout, and it was a varied audience, not just people either in favor or not, but, and then we got another good turnout when I made a bunch of phone calls, but, so direct contact with the people, I think, is gonna be key.
Yeah.
Yes.
You done?
Yeah,
Okay. Each town clerk should have a mailing list because they all send out their town reports, correct? No?
We don't have a mailing list, anything,
Yes, we do.
an emailing list.
No.
no, but a regular
No.
mail, yeah.
Mailing
The
list.
physical
Snail mail.
mailing list,
Snail
everyone
mail,
has that.
you know that old, you remember that,
Everybody-
you know, the guy with the satchel, he comes and, okay,
Rides a horse?
yeah, rides a horse.
Yeah.
And-
Wells Fargo.
Yeah, every 50 miles they change horses. Okay.
Yeah, I think every town.
Well-
Your
has that.
taxes paid, you
Let's
have a
move
mailing
on.
list.
What I'm saying is, each town clerk has a mailing list. So maybe we should take the mailers, get a date for an informational meeting a week before, and mail out the mailers with the information. This will be the last final information meeting before the vote, and do it that way.
I think it would be very
I mean,
worthwhile.
hold several and then send out a mail about our last one and see if we can bump it. to
Either
what's
hold
up.
several or hold the one you have to hold, whichever way you.
Probably hold a few. I would say we probably
Great to
hold
be
a
able
few.
to- If we ended up voting on this and all towns vote to join this process, I think it'd be great. I mean, Jamaica, Wyndham, I mean, Townsend's one thing and Newfane, even Brookline are one thing, but Jamaica and Wyndham should have the opportunity to have one in their town, I think.
But you wanna have one before we vote, right?
There's one required, so 7 to 10
Before we
days
vote.
prior to the actual vote,
Mhm.
that's required by statute. But we can hold as many as we want. I mean, we can hold them in communities or not.
A list of 5 dates with 5 meetings,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
send it
That
out,
would be
just
my
send the same
suggestion.
mailer out to all 5 towns.
Yeah.
This way, if somebody
And we
shows
did-
up at the Jamaica meeting that's 2 days before the,
Because it's convenient to their schedule. kind of
Right.
thing. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
New-
or if they have more
Brookline did it
questions that
together
weren't answered, they
last
can
time.
show up for the other meeting.
Right.
Would it make any sense to have a meeting in each town, each individual town, and then a 6th meeting, an aggregate? Which
Right
would be,
before.
the aggregate one would be before the closest to the vote.
Right.
Could it be the same time as the Leland and Gregg informational meeting?
Ours is a month before town meeting.
Okay, so it would.
I would just say that we may not have to hold 5. I mean, last time Brookline and Newfane, having been used to meeting together for their
Yeah,
own,
sure.
they held it together at Newbrook. And so we didn't have to do all 5 towns, we did before. We held Townsend,
We could do that,
Jamaica,
yeah.
Wyndham, and Newbrook.
If I could
Yeah.
interject, at your meetings, people may want printed copies of your report. If it runs to 30-something pages, you have to consider that, or you could use some sort of video thing like we're using now to discuss the report, but you can't really have a report without the actual document available to people some way, somehow. So that's another consideration that is to be involved for the meeting, so people can actually see the thing. And they may want to see the ballot. I don't know how soon the ballot is prepared, but it helps if people can see the ballot before voting day too, to understand the ballot. Thank you.
So
Yeah, it would be
40
30 days,
40 to
30 to
40
40 days before the
Right.
actual vote, we'd have the warning in the ballot.
There's also I was just saying to Joe, we've got this link on here where you can sign up to have updates for the email list. We really should be pushing that, I think. to get
It's in
people to-
every press release that I
I
send out, every
understand.
public
Yeah.
service announcement has that wording in it.
But if we
But, you know,
really,
people get a lot of email, they're not necessarily gonna, of their own volition, sign up for more.
For more.
but if they're interested, this is an option.
Right.
Or maybe we
So-
can just set up 2 informational meetings. One, Newbrook, this side of the high school, and one somewhere on that side of the high school. Because now you're just adding more days to just,
Well, we can talk about what makes
Not worried
sense, and,
about
I mean, towns may have,
To have one.
towns may have really strong feelings about, we'd like to have a meeting in our community, you know, versus we don't really necessarily want one or care or whatever. But once we get to that point, we can hash out the meeting schedule. And it's not like we have to have the entire committee at the meeting either. We can have, you know, a few, like 4 or 5 members go and present, you know, here are the articles and answer questions. I don't think we need to be.
Can you do that, or do you have to have a quorum? 'Cause it's-
No.
There's
can
no
do it.
voting.
No,
it's
you
not
can do
a
that.
meeting.
There's no voting, it's not a meeting,
Right.
it's just information.
All right,
Go ahead.
good.
So also, I'll just say, the last time we gave the option to Townsend to either not have one or have one, and they wanted to have one, and it was one of the heaviest attended ones we had. So I think it's really important to offer that option, even though it was next door to Leland and Gray where our main meeting was supposed to be. But I'll also say that if there are requests from, like, for example, a church group or something, they'd really like to hear about it, I think we should be willing to do that too. It doesn't have to be the committee, it can be 1 or 2 people from the committee just to present information that's in the articles. If anybody's interested in that, I think it's a good idea to offer it. We've done that before with bond votes that we've had here at Leland and Gray. We're making the offer to people who are, wherever they are, wherever they gather, you know, if they're interested in hearing about it,
Sure.
we should be willing to do what we can to provide the information.
Agreed.
So we're agreed that we might do a card or something, some mailed thing.
Well, I'm just saying, time's ticking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So let's continue down the opportunities for students list and get through that whole, you know, any other points that people want to tweak, change, add, subtract? On both, on attachment A and pages 7 and 8? Okay, so we can move on then to the conclusion.
So can we, I have a couple.
Do you have questions?
Well, we added assets and debt.
What pages are we talking
I'm
about?
looking at 12 and 13.
Okay,
And I just have a real simple question, I think, John, you can probably answer it really quickly. When we are talking about land value and capital assets, what we're looking at is the physical building and the land it sits on.
Yes.
So.
And, well, the auditors may look at a bigger picture than that, but
Okay, but I guess the reason I ask is because Leland and Gray owns some land in Somerset that has a specific value, I don't know what the value is, but it was donated to us and it is in our name, and that is certainly an asset.
but I don't think that's in here, so I'll add that.
So that's what I'm asking, if it's not in here, I think we ought to look at that and see, because that is a
Yeah,
piece of property that's valuable and certainly is a good resource for our students at Leland and Gray.
I'm sorry, what was the location?
Somerset. So it's
Reservoir.
Somerset Reservoir.
Also would be a good resource for all students.
right.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Not just high school.
Well, in fact, it could be today. I
Yeah.
think it might be easier to be, at some point, our students do
Yeah.
go out and use it.
Mhm.
It's not easy to get to, it's a long way away, but it's a great piece of property, and we're proud of having it.
Mosquito field trip.
Look, Lori would know, the value of it, I
Oh,
would
yeah,
think.
probably, Lori.
I'll just go to listers,
Or the,
so it's just like the
maybe
rest.
the annual report.
Okay,
Okay. So conclusions are on page 13. And run basically through page 16.
so, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be the only one raising my hand, but I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
On page 14, the
Mhm.
first box where it's equity of opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
where it says not aligned with Act 46. We've had quite a bit of conversation around the transportation piece, and I don't, we all know we can't specify exactly what transportation will look like. But I would question that bullet under that not aligned. And the reason I say that is because we don't really know whether that's gonna cost more. Buses run from school to school anyway, right now. And I don't know whether it's gonna be a substantial investment, for transportation, or whether it would be only limited to students, with substantial family resources. Because buses do run between our buildings, and maybe there would be a way to do it without,
So maybe I should put a note, sort of a there may be kind of
I
statement.
would
Yeah.
prefer it to not be, because right now it says unless we invest in a substantial investment in transportation, kids
Yeah.
can't take advantage of it, and it's only for wealthy children. And I think that that's not,
That may not be true.
the truth necessarily.
But we don't know if it is true. We
Which is
can't-
why
we
he's
can't-
leaving it in there for, could.
So I'm putting sort of a there may be to
And I
it.
would leave the word substantial off, because I really don't think, I think
Yeah.
that's a judgment, and I think,
Because
who
we
knows?
talked about a central
Well,
place. we
If
talked
you're gonna,
about-
you should put there may or may not be,
Okay,
just for the fact of, at least tell them you don't know.
Yeah.
Because the way
Or
that
we
you're
could
making it
say
sound,
there
there may
may
be, like,
to
it's a
be
possibility, but we're leaning towards there isn't. You have to be, if you're gonna be transparent, be transparent. We don't know.
But if you say there may be,
And there may
that can
not.
also mean there may not be.
I would say there may need to be an additional investment in transportation, that covers it, I think, but I don't care, either way. I just feel,
Or there
It's a-
could
it's a bit of an unknown.
potentially be, or something like that.
I would replace the second substantial with
Yeah.
sufficient.
There has to be an added expense, because if you have a bus coming in from Jamaica or Wyndham in the morning to drop students off, you don't have a bus going out from the height, because this would be the hub here, obviously, because this is where all the buses come. Every bus from each town has a bus that comes to the high school, middle school, right? So this would have to be the central hub.
so,
That if somebody was taking a bus from Newfane to go to Jamaica School, they would have to come here, switch buses, and get on the Jamaica bus. And the reason I say that, where it's gonna be an expense, is because the bus, once it comes in from Jamaica, doesn't go back to Jamaica in the morning.
so I would suggest that because we don't know what it's going to look like, what bus routes will look like or anything else, or, because it may look quite different. I don't think we can answer that question. What I'm saying
Well,
is,
it's obvious, the buses come one way in the morning in.
Ken, what I'm just trying to get in here is a correction that it isn't a given that it's going to be a substantial investment. And I think this change has been, is good. And I like the suggestion by Bucky that sufficient is better than substantial. And
But it's gonna cost more money.
I don't know that. So,
I think what we're saying is we don't, what we really wanna say is that we don't know. I mean, there are arguments to be
be.
made that it would cost more money. You could probably make arguments that it wouldn't be a substantial change at all, because there could be additional things, when you start talking about people who plan bus routes, I don't know. I think
And how are you
I think
gonna-
it's fair to say, we see there's a potential here for more expense, but we don't know for sure, because we haven't implemented this. And until you implement it, you can't know. Which is essentially what we're saying, do you think? I mean, we're not denying that it's gonna
Saying
be,
there
that
may
there
be.
could be an increase. We just don't know what the increase is gonna be.
But common sense tells you, there's no way that there's a bus that goes back to Jamaica after it comes this way in the morning. So if somebody's gonna be going from Newfane or Townsend out to Jamaica Elementary School and has bus, there has to be a route out there. Therefore,
so I would also.
there's gonna have to be an added expense to the bus route. It's that simple. It's just common sense that if you have choice, and then if you have somebody coming from Jamaica that's going to Newbrook, it's the same thing, because they'll have to stop here. The bus does not go back to Newbrook.
I think we're beating this up. It's not what
We're
I
not
brought
beating
for.
it up, we're using common sense. This is what you need to put in the
So you're in
report.
favor then
Your
of,
opinion.
this is gonna cost a lot of money?
I'm
be
not,
afraid, or- I
I'm
mean,
not
what
in
do you want
favor of
put in there for
anything costing
language?
a lot of money.
What do you,
Let's
see-
get
what do
that
you want in there
straight.
for language, Ken?
I'm just saying.
No, what do you
Really?
want in there for language?
We
What
don't
do you
believe-
wanted?
We don't know. If this goes into effect, it is more, to me, common sense shows that it is more than likely going to be an added expense. Because if you're gonna you have to have an added bus route, no matter what. There's no way you can say that the bus
So
is
that
Okay,
covers what you
gonna
just said.
so what you just said is we don't know, there could be an added expense. We're saying
Doesn't that
exactly
say
that, but there may or may not be an additional investment in transportation so that
Yeah.
kids could take advantage of this. We're not saying there won't be any increase, we're not saying
There
there will
may
be.
or
We're
may
saying there
not
may or may
be.
not be. And depending on how we work it, we don't know what the increase will be. I don't think we're, I
If
don't
you're
think we're
gonna
hiding
have
from
buses,
it.
if you're gonna have buses, take extra routes, it's gonna cost extra money, it's common sense.
This committee is not charged with bus route layouts.
Well,
This
we are
charge-
now that there's
This committee
choice
is
and we
charged
offer it.
with
Hold on a second.
46.
Hold on a second. Yeah, you're right, but let me straighten things. And in the interest of transparency, we're not saying there is or isn't, we're just saying there could be. And I think that recognizes everything we need to recognize and people can draw their own conclusions. But you have something to add, Emma?
I was just gonna say, if we're gonna change it there, I would like to see this similar change under goal 3, not aligned, where it says additional. I would just, like, there may be additional,
Potential additional.
yeah,
I think
just to leave it.
on this first one, the point that I think needs to be made is that the potential for not increasing equity is if there's not transportation. So I need to write it in a way that whether they cost more or not isn't the real point.
Right.
The point is, if the transportation
Exactly.
isn't there,
We're not doing.
then there's a chance for less equity.
So that wasn't what it said, and I agree with what you just said.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm more concerned
yeah.
about that than anything
Yeah,
else.
so
But I
maybe
didn't
write
get
it
that
so it
from-
says
thank you.
that.
And
That's what
would
it
you
really
do-
should say.
Would you do the same thing under goal 3?
Okay, let me
Because
just-
the
let
goal
me just
3
get
isn't
this
as
one
big a
here.
deal, but it just felt like it needed to be addressed there too, because it just seems too cut and dry.
Yeah.
I agree, that's really what the point is.
Yeah, it wasn't making the point that needed to be made. That was pretty obvious from your discussion.
Okay. So, we're rewriting that one. Can we go down to the next one? Goal 2?
On goal 2.
Oh, thank you. So does anybody have anything on goal 2, or we're good there? All right.
Oh, wait a minute. You, in the first bullet, it says that coordination and alignment of instructional experiences and expectations would lead to a more successful elementary preparation for middle school. They could or they may. Whether they do or not depends upon the capabilities and the attitudes of the students to take advantage of the opportunities. Just the availability of them does not automatically say that that would happen.
So that's not how I see it. Because the opportunities are not necessarily there today, it doesn't matter whether kids want to take advantage of them or not, and this provides the opportunity for that experience to happen.
That's entirely different.
We're looking
You-
at that from a different
We're
perspective.
So how can
we're
we,
talking about providing opportunities.
how can we write that reflects what the committee believes?
I was comfortable with that.
Well, we could change would to should.
Or could.
Or could.
Good.
I will tell you, it's something that at Leland and Gray, we've been hoping for a really long time, and there's been a lot of work moving toward that, so that students are,
Yeah,
right, so
I don't argue
this is
that,
an op-
but just,
So that's the way I was
just
looking at it.
changing organizational structure does not guarantee that something is going to happen. It provides the opportunity for it to happen.
So I would say the first, coordination and alignment of instructional experiences and expectations is something that is, that would lead to it, and that's where I was looking at it, that
We could get rid of the would and just says leads. Typically, you
That
know,
works.
you've seen it happen with your math
yes, that's what I'm
program.
trying to say, it does
If we just said leads and get rid of would,
work.
because you've seen that with your mathematics.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, well,
Does that work?
yep.
nope.
So what would work?
There's no
Just could.
guarantee it will. It could lead.
We
Or
have
how about
experiences where it
has
does.
led? Because you've
Yeah.
seen that experience with your mathematics
Mhm.
Yeah,
program.
Typically leads.
there you go.
We know it does.
All right, say typically leads then.
Satisfies.
How about that?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Compromise.
Potentially. Or is that less?
I think leads is enough.
I think it's a little stronger than that because you've seen that in your system. So,
Yeah, I think so.
you know,
We have
it's one thing
examples.
if you were just
Yeah,
taking experience from research or something,
Right.
but you've actually seen
we've
this.
experienced it.
Right.
You don't see them when they get to college.
I've seen two. We've done pretty darn good.
It's because
Any-
your first year on Destin.
Well, I've seen thousands.
Anything,
That's where
anything
I'm-
else in
that's where I'm
goal
coming
That
from.
two?
freshman year, that does it all.
All right. Goal 3, we have the same discussion around transportation. where-
Yeah, so I'll fix
Where you're
that.
fixing that one, changing that language. Anything else in there that needs to be adjusted? Goal 4,
So,
go ahead.
so, on the not aligned with Act 46 under Goal 4, the final bullet where it says having a 5-town school meeting replace individual town meetings would reduce the existing town discussions about annual school budgets.
True.
I don't think that it's been decided how that would take place, and I could see the annual school district meeting happening, because we've been talking about doing it at Leland and Gray ourselves anyway, happening after town meeting. So there could be a substantial conversation, and one that's bigger today than there is about school budgets at town meeting. I think that's certainly a potential. We don't know when that annual school district meeting would happen if we merge.
Mhm.
So I think that, we've been talking about this for a while at Leland and Gray, and we've never moved it because, it's a substantial move. But this would address many of the, accounting issues that we've had over the years at Leland and Gray, holding it so early in February. We often felt that it would be better to have it after town meeting. And I would suggest that town meeting might be a great place to have a really in-depth conversation around budget again. So I guess I don't really agree with that statement.
Well,
I don't see why they can't
also,
help.
if you were even gonna leave that statement in there, you would have to put in individual, replace individual, instead of individual town meetings, you can't say that, you have to say individual school district meetings at towns. You'd have to put school district in there,
Sure.
because if you don't, it's gonna make it sound like you're trying to eliminate the other town meetings and just have
Well,
one town meeting.
I
right.
think a whole bullet should go first.
But they aren't individual districts.
Right, but that would be.
Right, but they're still individual
replacing.
towns. That's what I'm saying. You're making it sound like all 5 towns are gonna do everything together.
Yeah.
If you leave it in there like that.
Joe,
Yeah, go ahead.
under this particular one with, I've also had
Small towns.
town people come up to me really concerned about the Leland and Gray budget being so much bigger than the elementary school budgets, and how to make sure that it doesn't consume more of the elementary schools, which is definitely,
It's addressed in
I see it sort of addressed, and I,
place where,
Yeah, I saw something about that.
it actually is spelled out just with what you just
Yeah.
said.
just
Where
what
is
I
that?
said, then I missed that.
No, John, I saw that,
Me too.
where was it?
Because I was
If
thinking
it's
under
separated?
transparency, it was,
For a
Was it in
modified,
the articles, maybe?
it's separated in a
Yes,
modified
it
union.
was something that it's
Yeah.
separated from the
But that's a
elementary
different,
budgets.
that's a different question, I think, than what was just asked.
okay, because I was seeing it as transparency, and maybe it's definitely a point that I'm confused about as I've listened to everything, so.
As a superintendent of a district where there was high school and middle school and
Mhm.
elementary school, it's a challenge in the work of the administration, and I
Mhm.
will tell you that. But it doesn't, there's lots of systems that superintendents put in place to ensure that sort of, and boards put in place to ensure that sort of overwhelming doesn't happen.
Can you give me an example of maybe a safeguard that
Sure,
someone
for
puts in
instance,
place?
I used to, we use the state equalizing piece, so high school kids counted 1.25 and elementary school counted, and then they got the teachers based on the population. So high school didn't get a whole bunch of extra teachers just because they wanted to run classes. They got teachers because they had that many students.
Based on the population.
And so teachers were based on the population and the cost of the teachers didn't matter for the individual allocation.
Okay,
So it was just teachers you got, and then we figured out what that cost to have that teacher pool.
okay.
So that was one of the things we did.
And so, and you said, well, so I'm looking at that more as a new board comes in and is trying to get used to how all the money flows and where the expenses are. That would be a bigger sort of, a bigger piece for the superintendent maybe to be aware of and to guide the
Absolutely.
board on that piece.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Well, I don't, I mean, no one would be, I can't imagine that the board would be out to like, I mean, it's a robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing.
They're all
If you,
ours.
if you pull
Yeah.
resources away from an elementary school to beef up your
just-
high school, you've just shot yourself in the
hurting our
foot in
own-
I
terms of
don't,
what
I
comes into
don't
your high school.
disagree,
You know,
but I see a
Your
high
job
school
is to
here that,
educate K through 12 and
Right.
give them what they need at every point, and to take it away from one end to service the other is, you know, crazy.
absolutely, but given, you know, that we don't know the people and the makeup of a board, I know there's concern out there in the community that there will be a majority of people looking out for the high school and not looking out for the elementary school. So I'm just bringing it
I
out
think
because
I've heard that
it's,
as well.
I think it's
it's a concern. And I certainly want to be able to talk to the community members that are concerned about that. So,
Please. Okay.
So I think it's also I agree with the concern, and I think it's something that certainly if you're hearing, or any of us are hearing, we should address, but I also think it's important that we stay focused on what these goals are.
and so I only brought it up just because it was the transparency piece and I'm
Right.
trying to understand and I wasn't
But-
quite sure where else that would be
But I
addressed.
think it links to all of the goals. I mean, we really need to make sure that we're being held accountable.
Yes.
As a study committee now, as whoever the future board is. I think we need to be held accountable for that. And that's staying focused on these goals.
It's really kind of that first bullet there.
Yes.
Well, and that's really what made me think of, should there be something else in that piece that says something more about it? But I felt like that bullet sort of covered some of it.
I think it does.
What do you want to do with the third bullet? I don't think you've resolved what you
Oh,
want to do.
sorry.
My suggestion was to remove it completely, because I don't know how we know whether that's gonna happen at all. I don't know when we know whether it's gonna be there. I don't see that as an issue, because I don't know when those, I actually think the opposite. I think we could actually have more conversation around the budget.
All depends on when we decide to vote on it.
Right.
Because if you're doing Australian ballot on town meeting day, then once again, you can't have that discussion.
So we don't do that. That's the reason I brought this up, is because we don't have the budget meeting at town meeting for Leland and Gray. And our intention when we talked about moving it to another time was not to move it to town meeting, because we didn't want to get in the way of the local budget time either. We talked about moving it after town meeting, the
And the
budget,
weather might be better.
and the weather might be better. So,
And then it could
anyway,
be discussed at town
And
meeting.
The vote
Newbrook
after.
does-
That's what I'm
Newbrook
talking about.
does
Just
I don't think you ever
before.
said vote.
I'm sorry, I meant
Yeah.
budget vote.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about only.
Yeah, budget.
Newbrook does theirs before in February.
But isn't the school budget have to be voted on as part of the town budget? Doesn't it have to
No.
be?
No,
No.
they're
We
two
can
separate
do it
entities.
as long
You
as it's
can't-
passed by June.
You can't
by
combine
July
the two by state
1st.
law.
Yeah, our
Has to be
town meetings
passed by
are
July
two
1st.
separate meetings.
Yeah, we have
The
two separate.
initially.
Yeah, in Worcester, we
That's
have two
different.
separate meetings, but we can't have the second one till we have the first one for
That's-
some reason. Like, our school budget meeting has to come first, and
No,
then,
ours,
So we're talking here
Ours
about annual
flip-flops
school
every
budget.
year.
That's all I'm talking about.
Right.
I think
So
we
what's
have
your
to leave
pleasure?
it- We have to leave this as a potential. We don't know how this information is going to get out. So if this board decides to have one meeting at Leland and Gray once a year, then it is gonna make it more difficult to get information out to the
Would-
towns.
Would it, if we wrote might there,
Well, I
might
wouldn't
reduce?
even, I'm still saying that if you're saying having 5 town school meetings replaced, that's saying that we may have 5 town meetings replace individual school district meetings, and I'm not foreseeing that happening,
So
so
it's having a.
Are
So
you
if-
missing a hyphenation?
if we have 5 town meetings replace
Having a
I think
individual
it
five-
says we're having
then
one
it-
meeting.
Yeah,
A
if,
one
if
meeting.
the board does
I just
that,
think
then
that's
that will be
that's making
the,
it sound like it's a given when you read it, and I think
But the
it
board
says we're gonna
needs-
have 5 school
Yeah.
district meetings.
No, it says we're gonna have one meeting with 5 towns.
Yeah,
There's a hyphen missing. It should say 5-town.
a 5-town meeting all in
a
one
meeting
place.
singular.
Right, that's
All in
one
one
meeting.
place.
So then, even then, when we do that, it doesn't address about the challenge, this is when it says it's not aligned with Act 46. So that's making an assumption that's the way it's gonna take place, and I don't know how it's gonna take place.
Have we ever said that anywhere previously in?
No,
Do we
Any
say
of our
that? No, I'm not
No,
No,
sure.
we don't talk about the wins.
no,
That's not something,
Anyway, I'm
that's not
just,
something that actually goes in the articles anyway, is it?
no. So this could be if a 5-town school meeting replaced individual school
Yeah.
district meetings.
that would
That
make
would
me
be
feel more
better. That
comfortable.
would be
I just-
better.
Might,
I
and we
think
can
this
use
is-
might.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Because I think what we should be talking about is being more transparent, not
Right.
less, and whatever works for our communities is what I want, so that's fine.
But what we should be talking about and what could possibly happen are two different things. That's the problem.
And if a meeting came out of this that was actually after the town meeting, so that towns could have budget discussions, each
At
town
town
could
meeting.
discuss at their town meeting, the
That'd be
budget for
Yeah.
the school district, it's one school
That'd be
district.
wonderful.
It would be great, and then
Yeah.
there could be then there would be a district meeting, and, you know, maybe Australian ballot, maybe not,
Maybe we'd get a bigger town meeting.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
I think there's an opportunity there.
Absolutely. I mean, and you can put sort of the opportunity on the other side. This is just one possibility
Right.
that would be unaligned.
Right.
I think one of the
Thank you, that
things,
helps.
one of the things to think about is that as people are reading this, they want to be assured that you looked at the negative side of these things too.
No problem with that.
And that's the only
Just don't want it to be
reason
an
for
assumption
doing it
about
this
it.
way.
Joe,
Yeah.
just below all these,
Yeah,
the
I have all
next
these.
statement,
So three.
after wide-ranging study,
You've got the
including-
stuff in there from Dover and Marlboro.
Yeah.
Oh, I do? Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
That, and
Yeah.
on the next page,
and
too.
you've got, yeah, another place you've got it.
So it says
Before-
3 towns and it
before leaving
mentions,
goal
you
four,
can
Joe.
fix that, it's
Yeah.
not, it just needs to be corrected.
Which
Yeah.
would be good, because it should shorten
Yeah.
the articles a
up.
little bit.
Yeah,
Go up to the bottom of 15, John.
3 towns.
and
And
at
there's a
the
little bit
top
on
of
page
page
15.
Right there where
Yeah,
it
down
says
here.
3
I
different.
read that and I was like, is that just for us to start working on?
Well,
No, you
that's
just need
kind
to
of,
clean that paragraph up, that's all.
but does the sentiment there, is the sentiment okay of it?
yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
Can we go back to goal 4, Joe?
sure.
John, the discussion that just had about small school grants and the merger grant, the residential tax incentives are 4 years. That has a date certain,
Yes.
and from your discussion, I got the understanding that small school grants and the merger grant do not have a date certain end,
Correct.
okay?
Do you want to add that to this? I'm
That you
sorry.
have while supporting a transition. So that suggests to me that these 3 are only transitory.
Okay.
So adding a bullet.
It's really only the residential tax incentive that supports the transition.
Yeah, that's right.
So small schools grant continuation and merger grant,
They're there for a different reason.
right.
Assist taxpayers. So how is that? The 4 years of residential tax incentives, the annual small school grants continuation, and the one-time merger grant assist taxpayers while supporting a transition to a unified system.
That's the truth.
No,
They don't?
because
They do.
the 4 years are to support the transition. The small school grants and the merger grant assistance, well, you say a
Well,
one-time.
It's just a
They-
one-time,
this is-
150,000.
Well,
That's a
then
hundred.
it's the annual small school grants that does not have a date certain end.
So you
That
want that,
becomes
we'll
a
do a
merger.
separate bullet. We can pull that out.
But that's the truth. The
It
merger, the
supports.
small schools grants goes away after 4 years, right? And it becomes a merger. Well, I mean,
It just changes name.
Exactly. So it's the name thing that is where it's,
No, but it,
But that's not what Bucky's
in
getting at.
essence,
I
it's
don't
still
think.
there.
it's a merger support grant, is what it's called.
That's true.
And that
And that's the- but
continues
that's the-
beyond the transition,
Yes.
if there is a merger.
Remember one time. Transition grant. So, I mean, we could say the annual small school grants changes its name to the merger, but that doesn't really add any
That's-
information.
Not really.
You could say
There's-
what it's going to be.
There's three things. There's the 4 years of residential tax incentives.
Mhm.
There's you get to keep your small school grants.
And you're hold harmless.
The whole harmless starts going away for everybody over the next several years. So that doesn't really, doesn't, it's really not a,
If you want to emphasize what assists taxpayers while supporting the transition, it's the 4 years of residential tax incentive and the one-time transition grant.
and then put the annual small as a separate bullet.
Either that or
merger
not at
Ma-
all, because
maintain
those are
annual-
those are present now.
Right, but they would go away without,
Without a merger.
If you don't
Without a
merge,
merger.
they go away.
that's the kicker. But I don't think it matters if you change them into two bullets.
Okay, I didn't know that piece, so,
Does that make a difference?
yep, it would make a difference. They only stay with unification?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry.
So now
That's
you-
why the continuation is on there. Transition grant, assist tax.
So now that bullet's okay?
I like that addition of the specificity of each one. I think that's helpful.
Okay, anything else in the conclusion? We're gonna fix the
I'll fix the.
conclusion part to actually reflect our towns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Anything else in the draft articles? Any other items?
Yes. When you were at last meeting is where you came up with the new title for the district, right? New name of the district? Did you consider not including unified? Because to me, when I read West River Unified Education District, the emphasis is on unified, not on education. It's that West River Education District.
Yeah, but then we're back to a W red,
So that's, you know,
like the acronym of.
That's
of a
immaterial.
rude better, with the W being silent.
I just asked the question,
So either way.
I don't believe they considered it.
and
Without-
I yield to the majority.
Or it could be West River School District if you don't want it just to be.
No, I like
I like
education,
education.
because that's what
I have
that's
no-
what it's about.
Thank you.
I could go either way,
Yeah, unified could go or stay, I don't.
yeah. I kind of like without,
Do we need it? We
Little
don't need it.
warmer
We'll
I think
take
we
the
need
word
it.
unified.
We're just naming it.
I could care
Yeah.
less than.
yeah,
as
let's
long as
take
it's a-
unified.
Take it out.
I think
Yeah.
education should stay though.
Yeah, I like
Don't care
education
one or the
district.
other.
And
Yeah.
then we just need to name it, and West River works.
You can leave unified district in the parentheses.
Yeah, that's.
It sounds
right.
less
Because we've
clinical.
explained it, yeah.
It sounds very clinical with the unified.
It's WRED.
An easy acronym to remember. Anything else?
Better than rude.
Yes.
On the,
I'll
What
disagree
page,
with that.
Patty?
page 19, board members' terms. There's, Pam and I talked today, and there's still some confusion, and I'm wondering if these years are correct. So if you've got someone being elected down at the bottom on March 7th, 2017, then how are they a one-term ending March 2020?
Look at the sentence above it, I'll
Yeah.
highlight it. It's, I mean, you can do it differently, but the way we talked about it was that member terms start when the district becomes operational.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're gonna have turnover before that even starts.
so if they're elected for this, in March of, this coming March, then when do they don't start right away?
They do, but the district doesn't become operational till
Right.
July 1, 2019.
Okay,
So
so
then
what
that's
did
1
they?
year to the, almost 1 year
So
to the
they'll-
next March. So they would be on it from the start of the district. Well, it's hard, they would be elected now,
Right,
but then their actual, the 1 year part of their term starts July 1, 2019, goes to March 2020.
So they're like a transition team
Exactly,
for those
they have to do a
preceding year.
budget.
yes.
So anybody.
So they'll be there for one budget cycle.
Right, and then
that-
they're up for reelection. And then the next
That's
year,
3 years
another
later,
one's up for
1 year.
reelection, and then the next year, another one's
It's a
up for
3-year,
reelection.
1 year
So-
term, right?
When did
3
they
years
don't-
into their 1 year term.
They start working on the budget?
After they organize, and they probably won't do it for another year until the spring of,
Okay, so that 1 year person is only there for a brief time.
for 3 years. It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, it's a 1 year term,
That lasts for 3 years.
so,
And the 3-year term is really on there for 6 years.
boy, I'm not going on this
The
one, how
person-
tricky.
The person that gets the 3-year term is there for a while.
It's
They
there for
are.
a 5-year term, because the
There's a
term,
transition.
the transition period doesn't count towards the term.
Oh,
The term
but
starts
they're
in
not really,
2019.
okay, that's not how it
You're
goes
elected.
forever.
They can't.
No,
Right,
then
no,
it's-
then
that's
it's
just
just every
beginning.
3 years, then it's a 3-year term.
Right.
It's a 3-year term.
Okay, I guess the
We'll
3
need to be able
years
to
what's
explain
throwing
that.
us off, but.
Yeah, we
Yes.
can like show
If
you
you're
exactly
sure
how
that
it
those are
works.
the right dates, then
We
I'm
should-
good with it.
We should get that clear about the timeline and what happens to those people who are elected
Yeah, they might like
on
to know
March
that.
7th, 2017. We should need to make that real clear somehow.
Yeah.
With a simple sentence to the effect that the elected board will serve as a transitional team between election in March of 2017 and the implementation of the district in July 2019,
I think that
Yeah.
makes sense,
Yeah.
Bucky.
up in.
But I think
the-
when you talk about transition team, people have a notion that that's not, there's no authority
A
in
legal
that.
board, yeah.
And there is authority in this board. That's the only, but I think you can use that language when you talk to people.
Okay, if anybody has a question.
I understand it now that it's not, that
If
that
there is
isn't really a
sentence we
1
could
year
put in there,
term.
that would be useful. I think it might go right here.
Right after the gray.
So
Yeah.
you could just say something like, from March 2017 through July 2019, the elected board members will something.
That's what we were trying.
Manage the
We
transition.
just have to be
He
careful
doesn't
that
want to use
it's,
transition.
because they are a board member with authority.
Manage affairs of the,
Well, the next page talks about what the initial
Yeah, it
work
does.
is. Policy development, budget development for
The
the
board
2019, transportation planning, coordinating, all of that.
And
You could
Yeah.
just say they serve as a unified board elect. for the-
except that implies they don't have authority, and they do have authority.
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's the problem with it, is they do have authority to do things, like to negotiate with teachers, and they have
Right,
authority
they
to do
have to have
things.
authority.
Yeah, they're
They
not
couldn't do
provisional
that.
and they're not transitional, but they're the board elects. They're the,
But they're in office.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're the board. It's just really the clock doesn't start ticking on the expiration of their term to make it a staggered term.
could you call it a preterm?
No, it's not. Maybe
You
can-
could call them preterm,
I like the clock
Preterm
ticking. If you
members of the
could turn that
unified-
into some other language,
You know,
How
the
about-
clock starts
In
ticking
your
on your,
chart, you just
and
note
it's,
that
it's all done just to
3-year
stagger the board elections.
Yes.
You know, everybody gets elected and they're all gonna do this, but then the terms are gonna end staggering, you know, 1 year, 2 year,
So
3 year
you-
terms
so it-
from the date the clock starts ticking, so that we end up with a staggered board, so that, you know,
Right.
everybody's then gonna be a 3-year term
3 years
every other
staggered.
year.
Right.
Or every year you elect another.
In the chart, can we just note that the 1-year term is a 3-year term, the 2-year term is a 4-year term, the 3-year term is a 5-year term? Because that would make sense. That's all we'd have to do.
And then after that, it's just.
And then
a
after
3 year.
that, it's
Like
1,
a
2,
little
3.
parentheses, the one,
Yeah.
then you put in
Initial board, 3 years,
actual-
initial board, 2 years.
actual 2 years or
Or put
whatever.
in 2-year interim plus 1, plus 2, plus 3.
Something.
Something
We can,
like
we can do a
that.
better, we'll have to do a better job of explaining that, because it is
I
confusing.
want the 1-year term.
Okay. Anything else under the other items that we
Yeah.
need to discuss?
I
Yeah?
have a qu- I just have a follow-up question, John, I had asked about under Article 8,
What page?
page 18.
Gotcha, thank you.
The difference, the challenges that Wyndham Southeast was having around their, the way their members were elected, based on what their attorney was telling them it had to be done, and if ours is correct, ours would solve their problem, but I wanted to double check to make sure, because the question was, 9 members will be elected from the electorate in individual towns, and 2 members will be elected at large from the entire electorate of the forming districts. That makes total sense to me, that's the way I wanna see it, but they have had advice that they couldn't do it that way, that they had to have all the members elected by all the towns. And, I haven't followed up with them to find out, because I said, wait, because it was a huge stumbling block for them.
Yeah.
And I didn't, you know, I can foresee it being a stumbling block for us if this isn't accurate, but if these have been looked at, and that
The-
seems,
The agency's vetted it, and then
Okay.
our attorney will get it after, you know, you guys are done with it.
so this makes sense to me, I'm not
And
questioning
that's
this.
what, yeah,
I
and that's
like
what.
it. So as long as the
We want our
agency's
attorney
seen-
and the agency to make this happen for you.
Right,
Yeah.
because if you don't have members at large, this is how it would happen.
Exactly.
So I couldn't understand why they were having that problem, but it had flagged it for me, so, you know, I just wanted to make sure that we were,
Yeah, we'll just have to see what,
okay.
So how would that work?
So it
If
hasn't
somebody got the majority vote in their town, they could wind up not being on the board.
At
Is
the
that
at large.
correct?
if they're running for an
Only
at-large
at large.
position?
Only at large,
Only at, no, even,
no,
No.
no,
No,
majority in your own town gets the position.
as we have
But
it
the
written
at-large
here.
ones, it's everybody.
all right, that sounded a little fuzzy for a minute there. I
Well-
thought you were saying that, you said all
That
the.
is what Brattleboro's articles say,
Well,
what
yeah.
you just described,
Well, that's,
but ours doesn't say that.
but then that's not representing town. How
But
can-
that's
how
why you're
can
doing
we
it
do
differently.
that?
You're doing it differently.
We're,
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, in
that's-
fact, they're not even doing it the way you described, because they still say that everybody gets to vote, but it's, you know, each individual town gets to nominate, so. Anyway, it's, as long as
Sounds
you're on
confusing.
this, John, I'm good with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I know what you want. Find a way to get it.
Good, thank you.
So,
We're getting electoral
there's also this
college.
one I wanna make sure that you want in here.
Article 12?
I wondered about that.
Oh, yeah.
That's
I
Yeah.
put it in here
I
because
already
there was
signed.
discussion and I wanna make sure that's what you want.
Newfane does theirs, you don't do
July 1st, election of board.
all yours.
Where,
It isn't going to be done that way in Newfane, so it can't be done that way, that's why I highlighted it
Oh,
online.
it can't?
Well, Newfane doesn't do it from the floor.
Okay.
So I highlighted it to tell you that that sentence won't work for the town of Newfane,
Can we
because
leave
we
it as an
elect
option?
people by Australian ballot.
It works for Brookline.
Because some of you want it that way, right?
Can we have
So
either
why
one?
why can't it be
As
done
preferred
either
by
way?
town?
Yeah, I'll
Right now, it's done either way.
figure it out. Well, yeah, but you're not one system.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is if we're going to take if the elections are happening in each individual town, can it be just the way each town elects members?
Yeah, so,
Why not, yeah.
See, why not? We're the only one who does it this way, I believe, we're not gonna change at Newfane, I'm sure.
No.
See, the thing is, I'll work on it, but just, you can't say the way each
I'm not
does
suggesting we say it that
exactly.
way, I'm just saying why, I don't see why it has to be done by a floor vote. Why does
doesn't
it have
have
to
to be.
state?
It doesn't
Well,
have to be done.
that's what I'm saying, why does it have
No.
to state how it's done, just that it will be done?
Will be
That's
done
all
by-
I'm
Well,
asking
because
for.
there's
By the
one
voting method
entity
of
that's
that town.
controlling this.
Yeah.
This is this thing I'm
Okay.
struggling with. There's this West River School Education District that's deciding how to elect members to its boards. And for them to differentiate it by town.
So-
I just,
So.
I'll need help on figuring that out.
Okay, and
from
that's
the
fine,
attorney.
but I would just suggest that if we said it will be done at individual town meetings, that should cover it, because I can't understand why
Except you
individual.
don't usually elect board members at town meetings. You usually do it at school meetings.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Right?
I'm just using your words, I don't care what it
We
says.
elect them at town
Well, but there's no
meeting.
school
But
meeting.
you
See,
open
is
the
what I'm
school
trying to
meetings
say.
when you open them.
Actually, for a for the unified
No,
In each
school,
town?
we do it by
Leland Grade
Australian
board members
ballot.
are elected at the town meeting,
We don't.
But-
not by the school
At
district
the
meeting.
school, the school part of.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
No.
no,
No.
town meeting.
Oh, really?
They're all done at town
The
meetings.
school
Okay, so-
district,
Jamaica's
the
a
school
town
district
meeting.
meeting
We do
elects
all of ours at
the
town meeting.
That's
Townsend
something.
Elementary School District. The
But we
Leland and
just
Gray
do them
board
a
members are
different way.
voted on in the.
Not in
Some
Jamaica.
vote from
Town.
floor, some vote from Australian ballot.
Yeah,
No.
can you change it, John, to
Jamaica
just say
does
that
all our
filling
board
terms
members.
allocated towns will be done by a vote of the electorate
the
at the
school
individual
part.
town meetings?
You don't have it where it just.
Does
goes.
that, is that,
Well, I suggested that, and he
Select
said
board,
that
school
that didn't work.
board.
as
Well, the town may, but if that's the way you're doing it, why not try it that way?
Well, I can't imagine why we'd need to change that, we're still, it's,
The board doesn't decide how they vote, the town
Usually that's
does.
done all during the town portion.
and our town made the decision to go to the Australian ballot years ago. And the town isn't gonna change that, and when we can't force our way on other towns who are used to doing it by the floor.
Yeah.
right, so we just say it's a vote of the electorate at the individual town meeting. If your town meeting is Australian ballot, then that's how you're gonna do it.
Exactly what I'm
Town
trying to
is
get
gonna
at.
do it from the floor, I think that does it. Just take out floor. and
Oh, yeah,
Got it.
I got it. Let's
That's
see.
all I'm trying to do. Okay,
While John edits, do we have more
I have to look for my yellow.
other
markers.
items to discuss?
See if I can highlights.
Anyone?
Anyone?
Emily's looking for
I,
yellow.
oh, right here, organizer.
Oh, Jeez.
I'm just chuckling, because I'm, the pushback on that is gonna be there, and so I'm glad you explained about the Leland Gray, because that's
More
helpful.
than happy.
I hope I don't get,
Maybe I can go participate.
everybody in trouble.
I think I can convince them.
by saying, well,
Tell them to call me.
you're doing Leland Gray
Doesn't make
that
any
way.
sense. I'm supporting my community, that's all.
Be careful what you wish for, because they might take that away from Leland and Gray.
Well, there wouldn't be any,
No.
oh, yeah, eventually, yeah,
No,
even if this
I
goes
mean,
down.
well, no, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
in the interim, they could say, hey, you can't do that. You're bringing it up before a town meeting, you better watch it.
I'm not gonna-
Any more
They
other
can't make a
points,
change that quick.
folks?
I'm trying to remember what I highlighted.
You got a
before,
point there.
so Ignore me. Oh, I think of something.
So I put all this language in about the modified union school district, I mean, unless you see something, it's just sort of, what has to be in there, so.
I guess I have one more,
One more? Okay.
because
What do
I'm
you
on the
got?
end.
Yeah, you're on page 33.
I was on page 33, and I was reading through the last thing here, where it says, the study committee financial data and analysis. And I think this came from this committee, I guess, or not. But I guess I was feeling a little uncomfortable about pulling out special ed in the way we've done it there. It almost
I'm sorry, what
makes it
page is it
seem,
on?
33 and 34.
33 and 4.
To me, it feels almost like we're suggesting that kind of investment is a challenge for us. And and maybe it is, but I guess I'm very hypersensitive about not wanting to highlight
Maybe
special ed costs being a challenge for us, because they're our students, and we try to educate everybody in whatever way we can. So I only bring that up, and I only highlighted the first sentence because it wasn't about the first sentence, it was just about the whole thing there, and I'm not,
something
I
about
was just
for the
not feeling
purposes of.
I would say there's no need for that last document in here at all if you don't want it.
It
That was
made me
done as a
uncomfortable.
request of the committee, so.
it just made me uncomfortable comparing spending and pulling out special ed and making it look like, oh, suddenly the spending is so much lower without special ed. I feel uncomfortable with that, and I would rather it wasn't in there,
I
But-
think
but
because
it's
they're
the-
all our kids.
But it's accurate, and I think there is a reflection, if you look at the per pupil cost that goes up, or down, down, it's based on that, and I think everybody in a
that's part of the
town.
budget.
That's absolutely true, but it affects the bottom line as to why one town may be much higher than another town one year and not
That's
5
true.
years ago. I mean, I think anybody who sits at a school meeting, at a town meeting, has had those questions.
So
I
I will
mean,
just say, if we're going to leave this in here, I wanna make sure we're not looked at like we're trying to discriminate in any way.
Well, we're
So
not putting
I-
numbers, we're not
Well, we
putting-
are on the next page.
or
not,
maybe
not specific numbers of how
I-
many that is.
something
I'm
explaining
just feeling
for the
uncomfortable.
purposes of
Well,
why it
To-
was taken out more precisely.
to look at it another way, what purpose does it serve to break it out with or without special ed?
I think it just shows, I think part of this, what this committee has discussed is how some towns have a much higher per pupil cost than other towns, and by becoming a unified district, they're essentially taking on costs they're not already paying. And I think
We addressed
that is
that in
where
here.
it levels the playing field. That's what I think that piece does.
We really sort of addressed that several other ways in here, without speaking specifically about special ed.
But not with actual numbers that actually put it right out there. I mean, you have the wording, you discuss how it works for that, but you don't, if you're living in a town that has a much lower per pupil cost, and you don't wanna take on, I'm just saying, that's what puts it right in front of you.
And I'm hearing you, but I'll push back again and say it could happen in any one town, any one year, and it's so,
Yeah,
so
it
one
can change.
year or whatever makes no difference to me whatsoever, it doesn't matter. It could be, some town has 5 years of none of it, and
I think it
and-
reflects back to the chart that shows the per pupil costs that go up and down like that. I mean, I
so
think that
I think we can do that without saying it the way we're saying it. I mean,
What
I'm
if we
hearing-
did it, if we took out the chart and I went through the text and did it so that it talked about it as the variable?
Variables is fine with me, but I
just got rid of the
I
actual
feel-
numbers.
Do you know what I'm concerned
Oh,
about?
no, I
Okay,
understand.
so as long as you understand that I'm
Right,
happy
I
with you looking
understand
at
it's
it.
just one
I
year.
just feel very, especially today, I feel a little more
What
concerned.
this
How-
points
how do
out
other
to me
people-
is the inappropriateness of it being an individual town burden and where it should be a state burden.
Well, absolutely.
Discussed at length, one of the advantages is to not have the massive swings because we'd be spreading special ed costs across everyone.
Which is what John's saying, he
And I
can
think
still
that is
put
what
in
the
the
chart
text.
shows. So
But I
it
think it
shows
only
that we
shows a
actually looked at
snapshot, and it doesn't really mean a lot. I
Yeah.
think we could say it in text and be a little more, we could be more clear about what it is, what the advantage is without sounding like we're pitting special ed against regular ed. I just feel really uncomfortable with that.
Well, what's interesting is actually, if you think
They're all
about
our
it, since
kids.
we do, even right now, we do Leland and Gray's budget, right? And it goes by percentage of students, right? In other words, if Newfane has 34% of the students, they pay 34% of the bill, correct? So regardless of if they only have 5% of the special ed kids up at
It only
Leland
depends
and
on-
Gray, that doesn't really, you know what I mean? It's not reflecting in that number because that's a combined pool, and then you have each school district different.
Depends
In
on
the other
special
part.
ed need.
It's like how Newfane and Brooklines, it just says Newbrook right up. Does it say just Newbrook up there? Yeah. So that doesn't tell you how many are from Newfane and how many are, you know what I mean? It just tells you that that's the per pupil cost difference. It just says, that's, it It's just a number, it's not specified. You can put special education numbers in, you can't put in identifying
That's
data.
not my point. I didn't say we were breaking the law.
No,
I
I
just didn't
just-
like what we were implying, and I felt uncomfortable with it, and if I'm overruled, I'm perfectly happy with that. But I'm not comfortable with the language as
No, but
it
in the
states.
spirit of educating all our children, I agree, the numbers shouldn't matter. That's what I'm trying to get across.
They're all our kids.
That's right.
Have a requirement by law
Regardless,
to
if,
educate
even
every one of them.
if it's, even if we're still Newbrook, they're still our kids. Even if we're Townsend, they're still our kids. If we're all together, then they're all our kids.
It might look a little less clinical in text
Text,
as
right.
opposed to a chart.
So take out the chart and I'll add text.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
And if that comes up in a discussion session, you can have that chart handy if you need it, but.
I would not,
Now,
Why would we
the
do
problem is the people that have been following this and see the drafts all of a sudden go, well, where did those numbers go? Why did you get rid of them?
And I
There
can
have been
explain
no
it, and so can
drafts
you.
circulated except by request.
And we just make the argument that we just made, where it's, you know, we're still talking about the advantage of combining, but we're not doing it with the actual numbers.
Well, then therefore, when we do the numbers, then we're gonna have to recalibrate the numbers.
Why
Or-
was special ed pulled out separately? We don't do it for theater, or we don't do it for soccer, or we don't do it for
Right,
math.
right.
So,
So then do the numbers have to be recalibrated then for, because if you're not gonna put those numbers in,
This
Right.
was just a separate.
That was just
Is
a
it?
Yeah, that was
separate
just a
thing.
separate, we've got the numbers of educating all the kids.
And that won't change those
We just don't have a
numbers.
line item broken out. Right.
okay, just check it.
there was one up here I wanted to make sure you talked about, this one.
What page?
So this was suggested by the state, and you have to decide whether you want it in. It's,
What page is that, John?
on,
It's right above,
it's right before the attachments.
yeah.
So it's
So
near
it's
the,
on page 23.
thank you.
22,
I read that.
23.
My pages don't match yours all the
It's
time.
22, 23 on ours.
That's the last bullet, and this is about, let's say
Okay,
one
it's on
town
23.
doesn't vote to join, but all the others do. Do you wanna say that you don't have to go back and have another vote of all the towns if they change their mind and want to come in?
Yeah.
So this is just making a process of a town that didn't join immediate,
Right,
Yeah,
right away, giving them time to join later,
I like that.
make it easier.
I like that too.
Now, does
Yeah,
it-
I
Well,
think
then,
that
what would
sounds
happen to
friendly.
the name of the WRED? Would it be the WRED plus, for example, Jamaica Townsend, because it's not, because it's gonna be a different district, it's not gonna be all
Yeah.
5 of those towns.
No,
K-
they've-
Pre-K
If
through.
another town were to join Leland and Gray Union, it would still be Leland and Gray Union, they're joining that union.
All right, but I'm saying if they don't join
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
WRED, and it's the WRED plus Jamaica, the WRED plus Townsend, plus Brookline. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's still the
Still
WRED.
Still W.
Yeah.
It's just that the voting happens a little differently, that's all.
And then what happens to that elementary
They
district?
still have
They have
their.
their
They
own-
have their
just-
own budget.
Same as,
Well, I know they have, I know,
Jamaica
I
Village
understand
School
that
would
part of
remain
it, but as
Jamaica
far
Village.
as the wording goes with it, it needs to be
They're
specified
Jamaica.
that
Jamaica
portion
Elementary.
is not part of the district.
They're Jamaica Village School and they do their own thing. And then at
Okay.
the high school level, they're part of the W.
Okay, so it'll still be the WRED.
Right.
All right.
True, go ahead.
So I assume that if that was to happen, the structure would go from the mud to the, whatever it is automatically? We don't have to put
Would go
provision in for
to,
that?
no.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Yep. All right, anything else we need to discuss under other items? John, anything else you want to highlight?
I think that was the last thing I had to make sure you looked at.
All right. So have we finally got it to where we can actually vote on adopting the,
I just want to say thank you to John for the work that you did.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
This, over these last just short few days, because we asked you a lot of you, and this really made me feel a lot better,
Yep.
personally. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I appreciate that effort.
My
Put in on our
pleasure.
behalf.
It's all those big bucks, huh?
That's right.
I paid consultancy.
I got a call from the chair of the other committee today, and I was holding my grandson, feeding him a bottle, because I'm apprenticing his infant as childcare. It's my new job. And he's screaming. He's screaming, and Rich is trying to talk to me.
I'm sure, that
everybody's
knowing
happy.
Rich well, I'm sure he was perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So then, we can vote on adopting these as our articles to send to the Agency of Education? Would that be the next step, John?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I would like to make a motion to adopt these and send them to the state.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adopt this version and send it to the State Board of Education for their review and approval. Any discussion on that?
I got an
Yeah,
email.
we have
from-
some discussion, yes.
Nope, she was
Oh, do you wanna do
Were
it?
you gonna just read it?
It
That's
doesn't
fine
matter
with
to me.
Go ahead, that's fine with me.
I got this email from Carolyn because she wasn't gonna be here. And she says, "Hello all, I'm writing this quickly as I prepare to leave for New York City. I will not be present at Monday's meeting, but Auntie has asked me to put my thoughts in writing as we get ready to vote on the Articles of Agreement. First of all, I want to thank everyone who has attended the meetings, study group members, and other interested parties alike. I think we have had some good conversations, but I continue to have concerns. One of the issues that I have had is the seeming opposition to having what I would call the hard conversations. Several times there have been criticisms of conversation that appeared to oppose the governance consolidation. Without those hard conversations, pro and con, unintended consequences frequently result. I feel the process has been too rushed. It wasn't until this last meeting that we actually talked about children and their increased opportunity for education as a result of this change. We have not really spelled out for the folks who did not participate in the RED process what this would actually look like in practice. This was evidenced at our last meeting when two members indicated that they did not realize that this big budget would include all the elementary schools and the high school combined. I'm concerned that there will be little transparency when it comes to exactly what is being provided to each school. What I hear repeatedly in my role as a legislator is that citizens want more transparency, not less, and this goes in the wrong direction. It also contributes to my fear that a school like Wyndham with one member on the board will be shortchanged with resulting poor performance and an excuse to close the school. I do not see significant enough changes in educational opportunity, school choice and pre-K, to warrant the loss of parental involvement and connection to the schools that I believe will result. I do appreciate the inclusion of the language regarding the closure of schools, school choice, and the clarification of the transportation language. For those of you who see me as the skunk at the garden party, please understand that I am representing the people of the town of Wyndham. Do I care about the education of all Vermont's children? Of course. I have written repeatedly about education being the most important investment in our future, country, state, and community. I do have experience, however, with situations when money grows tight and things get thrown overboard. I also understand proportional representation, but want to make sure the minority doesn't suffer at the hands of the majority. At this point, appreciating all the work that has been done, I don't think in good conscience I can vote for the Articles of Agreement as written. I thank you for taking the time to consider my concerns and wish you all a wonderful Thanksgiving. So I thought just reading it to you, since she wasn't here, wanted to have her.
May I have a copy
Yeah.
of that and put it directly in the minutes?
Okay.
Let's see, how many people do we have here?
No.
8.
How many are on the committee? One,
8?
I'm not.
no,
Yeah, we're
total
counting
is
8
No,
committee
no.
members that actually vote.
8, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh,
5,
15.
6, 7, 8, so nearly half are not here. Should it be forwarded to each one of the committee members?
It's in the minutes, he said.
Nearly
I
half
don't see
haven't
it.
been here for the last two meetings.
Yeah, I
It's
don't-
in the minutes either.
1, 2, 3,
I believe in the last 4 meetings.
7, 8, 9.
3 meetings.
Before voting?
So are you suggesting, Buck, you're suggesting we table the vote? Because we do have a.
I'm asking the question, that,
Right,
you
that's
know,
all I'm trying to.
if there were 2 people missing, that would be different, but it's just over half of the whole committee
All
not
towns are
here.
represented.
Yeah.
Yeah, every
And
town.
they all got this recent copy, right? Did anybody contact you, Joe, letting you know that they weren't going to be here and that they requested a certain question about the?
No, we made some changes tonight.
No, Carolyn was the only one who I knew wasn't gonna be here.
And Erin is not here, but she did not have any issues with what we're looking at, and she's ill.
Well, three of us from Newfane are here, and I didn't hear from Ian.
No.
Pam was, I talked
didn't
with
hear
her
from
today,
Tony.
her only question we addressed.
I think we should go.
No,
Sounds good.
I think there's no assurance that if we wait, we'll have any better attendance. I mean, I looked at the last minutes and we had 11, so we had 3 more, but we still were 4 short. You know, and I would imagine that, you know, we would, there's
Well,
no
I'm not-
guarantee we'd
I'm not
have.
suggesting a meeting, I'm suggesting circulation, they can read it and report their vote to you, submit their
have to
vote
be
to
a-
you.
We have
Duly
to be
warned
in-
meeting.
Yeah, I don't think we can vote that way.
We'd have to call a meeting to do it.
We can't have an email Australian ballot, try something new. Come on, let's break through
I
the
don't
ice
think
here,
it
this is
can-
the 21st century.
I don't think it can be done.
No.
We have open meeting.
No. I think it was pretty apparent that this vote was going to happen at this meeting too.
Yeah.
You know, from the last meeting. So, you know, I think if you couldn't make it, I mean, we didn't get a bunch of things from people saying, I can't make it, I really want to be there. Carolyn emailed her thoughts in, but, you know, nobody else has reached out to,
Do her thoughts
So,
count as a vote?
Brookline feels that it's all of
I
one
was
mind.
hoping they would, because I can't vote.
Erin is supporting this document.
Anybody know about
As am I.
Ian and Kelly?
Ian's had very busy.
No, not what they're doing, but their feelings, what,
Kelly knows about this, if she had
She was here
any
last week.
feedback, she was here last week, and if she has any
She
feedback,
knew
I'm
it
sure
was
she
gonna be
would send it
voted
to us.
on.
Jamaica, like-minded?
Pam's fine.
Don't know.
Can we go over what approving this means, what the next steps are? So that we all know what's gonna happen next.
So what'll happen is, I will send it to the state with the notion that this is your approved set of, approved report and articles for their review. I'll send it to your attorney for a look at it. In fact, there's one thing in there, I even have a note in there, it says, attorney needs to
Yeah,
look at
saw
this.
that.
And that, the attorney and the state will talk and let us know of any particular changes that have to be made. That's why the next thing is to get a couple of people that can authorize small changes. And then it goes to the state board. The final has to be December 9th. That has to go to the agency and they send it out.
Does that require another vote?
No, not if you authorize members to approve any changes. So then the state board will look at it, they'll give you a yes or no. And you could go back to them, I suppose, in January if there was something particular that came up, but then it would be ready for a vote. Any necessary towns are required to have a vote on it. Advisable towns actually don't even have to have a vote, which is really, that's an editorial, I won't use that editorial.
Well, right now, isn't everybody necessary? Didn't we decide that everybody was coming into this
No.
necessary?
No, just Newfane
Newfane
and
and
Brookline,
Brookline
because
are
the numbers don't
necessary.
work
Joint
unless,
district.
unless both of them.
I feel
You're special.
I feel special.
You are special.
So, does that help? Any
does,
other
so-
questions about it?
In the next line, are we talking about changes that change the entire document, or are we talking about like typos?
Somewhere in
Because-
between that, nothing of substance, but there may be a law reference has to be inserted here, or a language, words have to be changed.
So I could see like the school closure clause, and they're like, yeah, you can't have that. And we've had a lot of very specific discussion around that. Would that then come back to this group?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Anything that's of substance, you'd
Trying
have to
to-
come
We'd
back
have
and
to
meet.
call another meeting.
Yeah.
What is it that, where, I can't find where you have that thing in there that says need to be checked
Oh, it's a
by the
date, it's a
attorney.
date for transferring of,
Yeah, it has to do with the asset transfer.
yeah,
You know, that's the kind of the thing where we've picked a date, but we're gonna check it with the attorney, there may be a statutory date, so whoever was on that select little group would be like, yes, fix that.
But I agree with Drew, if there's anything that's gonna change.
Oh, if
the
there's
subject-
anything that changes the substance, it should
The
come back to,
intent.
it's page 20, where that is. But if there's anything, you know, yours, the school closure, I mean, if they said, no, you can't do choice, I mean, things that we spend a lot of time and energy figuring out that make these our articles, you know, no one's gonna change those without the entire committee acting. And I think, you know, I would imagine that that small group would sort of err on the side of caution. It's like, no, we talked about that more than once, that's really gotta go back, we can't, you know, that's not something we're comfortable changing. It's not a ploy to change it by a small group or anything. It's just, you know, there might be something that the attorney says, you gotta clean this up, you can't say that. Yeah?
I have a question for John. This would go, once all of that vetting has taken place, this goes to the state board?
yes,
And that's the December meeting, or the?
December.
Okay, so do you know the date of that?
20th.
20th, thank you.
In Montpelier, I believe.
Okay.
Anyone else? We ready to vote? All right. All in favor of approving these and releasing them to the Agency of Education and the greater world, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Carolyn,
Right,
opposed.
okay. So we've got 2 opposed and the rest, any abstentions? All right.
2 here, or are you taking Carolyn's?
I took Carolyn's as a no. I mean, I don't know if we really should, but actually, it doesn't matter. We probably shouldn't take it, because you really can't vote by writing, can you? No.
I don't know.
I mean, it's noted in the minutes that she said she wouldn't support them. It goes down as a 7-1 vote rather than a 7-2.
Question is whether the law would allow, and the law, I mean, John, you can.
Yeah, and err on the side of caution.
She wasn't
Probably,
Skyped in,
yeah,
so-
and since it doesn't change the decision, I don't think we record her vote as actually being there, but it's in the minutes that she was opposed to it.
Well, can you just put in the minutes, 7-1,
Yeah,
with one
with Wyndham
absent?
writing that
writing
they did
vote.
not support it. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Noted that Ms.
Plus
Martin's
one, I'm sorry.
email was
Plus
not
one.
counted as a vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so, does anybody want to be on the committee to approve the specific required attorney changes? I would be happy to do that.
PR.
I'll be happy to be asked about that. You know, I don't expect it to be a lot.
I can do it
Statutory
if you need
references.
somebody.
If somebody else if anybody feels strongly about they want to see the kinds of things that we get asked to change,
I'm
let me
happy
know.
to help if there's no one else to do it.
Drew, Ken,
I'll do it.
you want on?
Did you say yes, Drew?
It wasn't me.
All right, so we've got Drew, Ken, Emily, and me who volunteered to do it. Do we want to actually vote us in?
I would appreciate it.
All right, if someone could make that motion then.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Who moved?
Bucky.
Bucky moved and
Bucky moved,
Patty
Patty
seconded.
seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of Ken, Drew, me, and Emily acting to approve changes required by an attorney or the board, please say
can I
aye.
have one question? If Carolyn wanted to participate in that, is there a way to add, that she can still join that group, since she's not here?
You could volunteer her.
you would have to, ask. We should do it now.
She doesn't show up,
She was
doesn't
gonna
show
do
up.
We could volunteer her now, and then she can always,
Yeah, she
You
can always
always
decline.
resign.
yep, let's add her to the
Or just
list.
not show up.
Maybe that would be great, just because I don't know if she would be interested in it, so.
Can we offer that as a
Okay.
friendly
Name 'em
amendment?
again.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
I was just
Okay.
gonna say, I bet Bucky and.
And that'll be a friendly second.
Meeting.
All right, so now the motion is to have Ken, Carolyn, Drew, myself, and Emily as the people to approve, specific members to approve any changes required by the attorney or the state board. All in favor, please say
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Excuse me,
Well,
Jim.
just, now, do you all have to be together to approve it, or can any one of you approve a change?
I think that one can be an email.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it has to be the entire
Yeah.
group, it's just,
I mean, you're just,
But
yeah.
I
It's
think all of you
consensus.
should see
Right.
it.
you know, it'll be an email.
Yeah.
Here's what they're
Yeah.
asking us to change, what do you think?
Yeah.
Yes, Peter?
Changes required by an attorney?
By our
By
attorney,
the attorney?
yeah, our attorney, the attorney, or the state board.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be
I
an
just-
email and then consensus. So now we'll release that draft.
As soon as I get it from him, I will
Yep.
release it.
It needs to be
Yep.
cleaned
And
up.
if you make
Right,
any
needs to be cleaned
changes,
up.
also make sure that I get the substitution. How do you want to handle making it available to the public? There's one at each school? Or do you want to assign yourselves to make sure the schools get one? Or do you want me to email it to the principals and ask them to print it out? What's your choice?
I'll send one to Jamaica.
Okay.
I could certainly just, once we get the draft articles, John, I'll just send it to each principal as chair, saying, you know, this is what came out of the committee, it's been approved as a
That'd be good.
draft.
We'd like
All right, great.
Would
And
you
I-
also send them to the board chairs too?
Sure,
From each
board
district?
chairs
Oh,
and
yeah.
principals, and just say, you know, make these available.
And you'll do that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Great,
Make
and I
these
have a
available
cover
as you see
sheet that
fit.
goes with that for
Okay.
the public that says how to comment, so I'll forward that to you.
Okay, and then we can post it on the blog, we'll put it on the website, on the WCSU
Great.
part, and, you know.
So all I need now are your dates for your public meeting.
Wait a minute, before we go there, any value in having a copy in the town clerk, town office, in addition?
I don't think there's,
Anywhere.
I don't think there's any, you know, there's value in having them widely distributed. You know, the chances of somebody picking them up and reading them, you know, the more the better. So sure, you know, if you wanna put one in.
Yeah.
Yes, put one in the town.
Yeah, I'll take one up and put it up. We have a bulletin board there for the school section. I'll put one up there.
And I think, you know, put them anywhere that you think they'll be noticed and read.
Right, now I'll have that cover sheet, because the cover sheet is how to comment. It's instructions to the public how to
Sherry,
comment.
you'll get one down in,
Huh?
you'll make sure they get one down at Brookline.
I'll get one to Guy.
Get one to the guy, the
Yeah.
guy.
Okay, so, the next steps, obviously, we're into sort of the, public outreach phase a lot more now, since we're done discussing what we're gonna do with the articles. I know we need some sort of a outreach timeline, and we need to start talking about when, where the public information meetings would be.
We need to look at
I'm not sure.
individual,
We probably,
towns
right.
to make sure that the towns aren't meeting for any particular reason.
Are you gonna have your meeting on December 7th now, or is that?
We have
So
a scheduled
just-
meeting.
Just so you, just so you know that the Wyndham Central Board, I told you there was a conflict between ours and the Wyndham Central Board, but we did quite a bit of work at our board meeting, and so the only thing we need to do at Wyndham Central on the 7th is a half an hour meeting at 6:30. So we had said we needed to meet at 5, but that's no longer necessary, we could still meet at 7. So if there was going to be a meeting on December 7th, and I don't know if there is or not, it can be moved back to 7 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock, which seemed to be a challenge for quite a few people.
Okay. So,
Ken, should we have a joint informational meeting again?
yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
really, the December 7th meeting then would be to just sort of, we could have the December 7th meeting and spend the bulk of that meeting organizing the public outreach and having dates figured out. You know, we can get the meeting schedules for the various school boards and towns and things like that, and then figure out where our meetings fit in, and sort of plan that out, and give you the timeline for the public meetings, you know, the informational meetings then. That way we don't have to start looking at necessarily those dates and things now, when we don't have the town meetings, the school board meeting schedules. And then if we wouldn't have any changes by then, would we? By
By December 7th, it should be totally finalized.
Finished by then.
Okay, so then we would also be able to bring the entire committee up to speed on any
I'm
small
just
changes
also
that we
worried about
made.
like select board meetings in individual towns.
That's what he was just talking
Yeah,
about.
and, you know.
Right, we can have that whole schedule laid out, so we're not gonna be up against a select board meeting or a school board meeting or a, you know, I think that's probably as far down as we'll go, but.
Winter concert.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
those are trouble. So, I think that's, do we need to do anything else at our December 7th meeting, John?
Just confirm the time so I can change it again. I
7?
changed
I
it
would
from
s-
7 to 5, now you want me to change it back to 7?
I would say 7. 5 was difficult for people, and since WCSU can get by with a half hour.
So should we
Seven.
make a motion on that? Just because we're changing it again?
I don't think we made a motion to make it at 5, we just sort of published our meeting
Okay.
I
schedule.
think it was by
Change.
consensus.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we're back to 7 on the
I'm with
7th.
it.
Is
We'll
that
plan our-
easier for everyone?
Yeah,
7 is much easier than 5 for me.
Either way.
me too.
Okay.
So we're back to 7, we'll plan our we'll start planning public outreach, and we'll have the comments from the state board and the attorney. Anything else we need to do?
I don't think so. I think, hopefully, if I've done my job right.
Before we adjourn, I would just like to point out that we went through the whole red process, the whole MUD, the whole regional education district, and we just renamed it again a red. I just want to point that out to everybody.
We've come full circle?
Okay, so, yeah, I'm just pointing that back out to you, okay.
All right, well, congratulations on making the full circle journey, folks.
So this is probably my last meeting, so I just want to thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you.
No,
and,
please get out now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, thank
Because
you.
baby to take
You've
care
been
of.
invaluable.
Glad I could help.
It's a Wednesday.
All right, so one more motion.
7th at 7.
Who wants
Make
to
a
make it?
motion, we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
We're out.